This is the module entitled How the Sales Comparison Approach Applies to the Value Analysis Report. The purpose of this module is to introduce you to the sales comparison approach valuation methodology, and then show you how it's used in the value analysis report. By estimating the market value of the whole property, which is also going to be the same as the larger parcel, and then deriving a unit value of the whole property that can be allocated to the part taken. There are three ways to estimate value. The sales comparison approach is only one of those ways. The first way is the cost approach, and this approach has someone estimating the replacement cost new of the primary improvements and then determining the depreciation of those improvements to derive a depreciated value of the primary improvements, and then adding to that the value of the site improvements, and then adding to that the land value, and the aggregate of those things equals value via the cost approach. The second method is known as the income approach. And in the income approach, the net operating income, NOI, is divided by an overall capitalization rate. And NOI is derived by estimating the potential gross income, subtracting from that vacancy and collection loss to estimate the effective gross income, and subtracting from that operating expenses to determine what the net operating income is for a piece of property, and then estimating what the overall capitalization rate is, and dividing that rate by the NOI gives us a value via the income approach. And finally, we have the sales comparison approach. And with that approach, you find comparable sales that are as similar as possible to the property you're appraising. You adjust those sales to the subject and then reconcile a value. Only the sales comparison approach is truly considered in the value analysis report to estimate compensation for the land taken. Parts of the cost approach may be used when estimating the value of the site improvements that are taken. The sales comparison approach compares recently sold and similar properties to the subject property. It is a process used to determine the current market value of the property based on the principle of substitution. All right, we've introduced two terms. One is the principle of substitution, and the second is current market value. We're going to talk a little bit about those. The principle of substitution says that the maximum value of a property is usually established by the cost of acquiring an equivalent substitute property that has the same use. So here's an example. If the subject is a 100-acre field in southeast Ohio, and that field is zoned agriculture, has a highest and best use of grazing and/or recreation, and is 50% wooded and 50% pasture, it's currently used for grazing cattle and hay production, it's hilly terrain, there's no central water and sewer. If we use the principle of substitution, which of the following is an equivalent substitute property? A, single-family lot sold next door, contains 1 acre, was bought for $15,000 6 months ago, and a house is currently being built on it. Or is it B, a vacant 120-acre parcel sold, it's closer to town, it was purchased for $30,000 an acre, it's zoned industrial park, the terrain is flat, and it has central water and sewer available to the site. Or is it C? It's 1 mile away, it's a 90-acre vacant tract, it sold for $12,500 an acre 1 year ago. It's 25% pasture, 75% wooded, has hilly terrain. Which of those properties best represents the principle of substitution? Hopefully you answered C. All right, so let's talk a little bit about current market value. Current means, for acquisition purposes, it is the date of take, which is usually the date the whole or larger parcel was inspected for the purpose of valuation. And that's what the value analysis report is used for, is for acquisition purposes. If it was an appropriation, the date of take would be the date that ODOT or its agent walked onto the property or the date established by the court. So comparable sales should have sold as close to this date as possible. The date of take reflects a set of economic forces that influence value, and the comparable sales need to also reflect those same conditions. Market value. Market value is a definition, and there are many different definitions of market value. A value analysis report is used when there's a partial taking from a whole parcel, leaving a residue. The valuation problem caused by the severance of the part taken, leaving a residue, has been determined to be simplistic by someone competent in valuation. This taking is subject to ODOT's power of eminent domain. If ODOT and the owner cannot reach agreement on price, ODOT can exercise its power of eminent domain, deposit the FMVE into the court, and take immediate possession of the vacant property in the take area. As the appraisal and the acquisition are under the power of eminent domain, the market value estimated for the whole parcel has to meet the definition in Ohio jury instruction. And here's that instruction on market value. Compensation is the fair market value of the property taken. So what is the fair market value of the property taken? Well, here's that definition also from Ohio jury instruction. Fair market value is the amount of money which could be obtained on the market at a voluntary sale of the property. It is the amount a purchaser who is willing but not required to buy would pay, and that a seller who is willing but not required to sell would accept when both are fully aware and informed of all circumstances involving the value and use of the property. All right, it is time for a knowledge check.